Hey do-it-yourselfers, today I'm going to share with you 3 of my superpowers that should allow you to start a vehicle that has a dead battery and or a dead starter, or a vehicle that has problems with its ignition switch. So yeah, I'm going to share with you not only the how, but the why as well. But make sure you use these powers for good, not evil. All right, and actually before we start on our superpowers, I have a huge favor to ask, and that is to both my current subscribers and for my subscribers that are going to be subscribing after watching this video. And that is to make sure you click on the bell notification or the bell icon that's right next to the subscribe button, because unless you click on that, you are not going to be notified of my new videos that are going to be coming out. All right, so in the first scenario, let's say you get in your car, put the key in the ignition, you turn the key, and nothing. All right, so if that's the case, you need to figure out whether there's a problem with your battery or maybe it's your starter. So what you can do to narrow your problem down is to, let's say your car has automatic windows, make sure you can use them and the window goes up and down as fast as it normally does. You can also turn on your headlights and make sure they're nice and bright. Now, this might be hard to tell during the day, but at night it should be pretty obvious. Now, if they're not nice and bright, then obviously there's a problem with your battery, but they're, come on, nice and bright, you still need to do another test, which is to obviously try to start your car. And then observe your headlights. When you turn your key to the start position, your headlights should dim. You know, this is obviously, again, going to be easier at night, but if you're doing it during the day, have someone else stand outside the car and look at your headlights. When they dim, that they indicate that power is actually being routed through the starter, and your starter is not the problem, and indeed is the battery that's too weak. Now I'm going to get in there and start this car, and this car doesn't have a bad battery nor a bad starter, but you will still be able to see the headlights dim for a split second. All right, so let's say your headlights don't dim when you turn the key to the start position. At the same time, you do not suspect you have a weak battery because your windows work properly and your headlights are nice and bright. Well, the next likely culprit is probably your starter, especially if your starter has been acting up lately. All right, so first thing you need to do is to find your starter. Now, if you watch my previous video, you would remember that the starter is the component that draws the most amount of amps on your car. Now, the starter is grounded through the engine, which is grounded through cables that are connected to the chassis, and the chassis obviously is grounded back to the negative side of your battery. However, it does need to be supplied by a wire or a cable from the positive side of your battery. So basically, you start at the positive side of the battery and follow the cables that come from this side back. One of the thick cables should go to your starter. Now on this car, you can see one cable gets split off and go to this junction box, and the rest of them go underneath this junction box. And then they come out from this end, and if you follow them, they go towards underneath the intake manifold, and right there, you guys may not be able to see this, but right there is our starter motor, which is right now sitting there like this. Now, a lot of times when your starter motor stops working, it's a problem with the brushes wearing out or developing corrosion and not making contact with the commutator. So here's your brushes right here. Now this one, there's 4 of them, and here's where they need to make good contact. All right, so here's even a closer look, and if you look closely, you can already see these brushes being kind of worn out. But anyway, when they don't make contact with this end, the commutator, current doesn't flow through the starter and it doesn't spin. Now what you can do is to grab a long screwdriver, pry bar, piece of wood, whatever you can get your hands on, and try to get on the starter motor and then give it a good couple of taps with a hammer. And while you're at it, try to tap on the solenoid as well. And what that does is to hopefully allow the brushes to make good contact with the commutator, or move them just enough so that they're making better contact than they were before, and hopefully allow you to start your car. And the same technique might work with a dead fuel pump, as I've demonstrated in the past. Take the hell out of our fuel tank and maybe our fuel pump will start. All right, next up, let's talk about a circumstance where you suspect problems with your ignition switch. And when we're talking about ignition switches, we're not talking about this end. This is your ignition lock cylinder where the key goes in. The ignition switch is an electrical component that goes at the back of your ignition lock cylinder and switch assembly. What it does is basically routes power from your battery to the different control modules on your car. So for example, when you get in the car, turn the key to the on position, it routes power through the ignition switch to your ECU, your body control module, your car's computer basically, and that's when you get the lights to come on in your dash. Now, signs you might be having problems with your ignition switch is that when you put the key and turn it to the on position, the lights don't come on your dash, and you might have to like push the key, wiggle it, play with it, and then the lights come on and off. Then that could mean a problem with your ignition switch. All right, so in this scenario, let's say you turn the key to the on position. Sometimes the lights come on, sometimes they don't, but let's say this time they come on, but when you turn the key to the start position, the car doesn't start. All right, so if that's the case, that means a signal or power is not being sent through your starter solenoid to the signal post of your starter. Now what you can do is go to the junction box and locate your starter relay. Now we're lucky to have this info at hand, and our starter relay is this relay right here. And then you locate pins 30 and 87 on this 4-pin relay. Sometimes you have a 5-pin relay, but regardless, you need to locate pins 30 and 87. In our case, it's going to be this pin and this pin. And then you find the corresponding terminals on the junction box, which are going to be these two. And then you jump those two terminals. Now, however, before you do this, make sure that you're doing this correctly, because if you jump the two wrong terminals, you can damage the wiring inside your car. And then if you damage the wiring that goes through the junction box, then diagnosing and fixing that is going to be a lengthy process even for a competent mechanic. So make sure you really know what you're doing. Now, sometimes if you're lucky enough, on your relay, you can see a diagram that will tell you which side is the switch side and which side is the load side. But you're not always this lucky, and you should really learn about relays before you attempt this so you don't damage your car. Now, if you're interested in learning these, I have a video on how you can test relays. You'll learn all about relays. If you watch that video, just have to do a search on my channel for how to properly test relays, and it will come up. All right, so we'll do this live so people don't think we're cheating. So we put the key in the on position, make sure the lights come on. There we go. Now you might be saying, hey, when I put the key in the ignition, nothing comes on, no lights come on at all. If that's the case, then things could be a little bit more complicated. You need to get to your ignition switch, look at a wiring diagram and see which wires take power to the different control modules on your car, supply power to those wires, and then you should be able to start your car from your ignition switch, at the same time bypassing your ignition switch. All right, up next we're going to talk about bump starting or push starting a car that has a bad battery and or a bad starter. Now, unfortunately, this only works on cars that come with a manual transmission. And the way this basically works is that we're going to use the transmission in this car to turn the engine. Now, basically, the way it normally works is that power goes from your engine to the transmission, then from the output shaft of the transmission to the wheels, and then they turn the wheels and your car gets going. Now, but by doing this, we're going to do it backwards or work our way backwards. We're going to use the wheels to turn the output shaft of the transmission. In turn, it's going to turn the gears inside the transmission, which in turn are going to turn the engine. So yeah, when you use the transmission to turn the engine over, as the engine turns over, it sucks in the air, compresses the air-fuel mixture, and then your car's computer gets that crank signal and starts the spark plugs, and then your car's gets going. Also, when you turn the engine, your alternator turns, creating a bit of current, which is usually enough to get the car's computer going, where it can start the whole ignition timing. Also, this car is a perfect example for this, because indeed it does have a weak battery. By the way, that's a telltale sign of a weak battery. All right, so the way this works is you get in your car, get the keys, put the key in the ignition, and turn it to the on position. Now, your lights may not come on, but this car just has enough juice for the lights to come on. But next, you push down on the clutch, and while holding the clutch down, you put the car or the transmission in second gear. All right, so next you need to get someone to either push your car, or since, as you can see, I'm parked downhill, I'm simply going to release my emergency parking brakes. And then once the car starts rolling and builds up some momentum, I'm going to release the clutch quickly. And you will not hear a noise as normally you would with a starter. So here we go. You'll just get a bit of a jolt and your car gets going, as you can see, and here. So yeah, make sure you use these superpowers for good, not evil. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to support my channel, all you have to do is watch another one of my videos. You can either click on this one in this corner, click on the one below it, or click and watch any of my videos in the suggestion box. That will greatly help as well. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.